Maybe Apple always intended to update the Mac Mini but got distracted by more urgent projects. Maybe Apple was waiting to do something different with the Mini, but it was taking too long. Or maybe Apple never intended to update the Mac Mini at all, but changed its mind after seeing just how much some of its customers missed the littlest Mac. I don't know, but I do know this. After 4 long fallow years, Apple has finally updated the Mac Mini. It's got faster chips, more memory, and higher storage options than ever before, but it's also got a higher price tag to go with it, starting now at $799. So is this the Mac Mini update everyone's been waiting for? I'm Rene Ritchie. Welcome back to Vector. Thanks for joining me. Let's review this. Now it comes in space gray. Seriously, that's it, and it's great. Yeah, I saw some people complaining that it was, wait for it, boring. Well, those aren't the people who want or need it. And if Apple had made it less boring by spinning it into, I don't know, an octagon or something, those wouldn't be the people suddenly buying it or paying Apple back for quote unquote innovating themselves into a bad product just to appease the armchair internet designers. You never change just to be different. That's desperate. You change to be better. Would changing the Mac Mini's design make it better? Not for everyone already using one, especially in stacks, most especially in server racks. By keeping the same design, those people, the core of the modern Mac Mini market, can simply pull old units out of their setups and push in the new ones. New, space gray ones. And that's way more important than any internet hot take, or frankly, any internet hot taker. I'm not going to waste any time on how much faster the new Mac Mini is compared to the previous one. That can be useful and important when it's generation over generation. When it's generation over 4 generations, it's not that useful anymore. What's more important than the update is that the Mac Mini has been updated, from Intel's 4th generation Haswell architecture to its 8th generation Coffee Lake. And you can now get it with a quad-core i3 at 3.6 GHz and 6 MB of shared L3 cache, a 6-core i5 at 3 GHz base and 4.1 GHz turbo frequencies and 9 MB of L3, or a 6-core i7 at 3.2 GHz base, 4.6 GHz turbo, and 12 MB of L3. All cooled by a new thermal architecture with a bigger fan, expanded vents, and redesigned power supply, because, frankly, Intel is still stuck at 14 nanometers and Apple needs it. It's no new Mac Pro, but it's not meant to be. It's for everything you don't want or need a Mac Pro for, either singularly for a lighter or more flexible or diverse workload, or in stacks or racks for massively parallel or shared workloads. Apple's current showcase is Compressor. Hit a button and one or more Mac Minis pick up your encoding load, letting you do something else while they chew through HEVC. That's thanks to Apple's custom T2 security chip, which, turns out, isn't just for security. Rumored to be based on the A10 Fusion found in the iPhone 7 and running something called BridgeOS, it can take the custom encode blocks and use them to handle video far better than the Intel silicon alone could possibly do. That's sort of the story of Apple's Mac line in general right now. As Intel slows to a crawl in its attempts to get to 10 nanometer and once again throws cores at a process problem, Apple is literally architecting circles around them. Be it for secure boot, real-time AES 256-bit encryption, unified controller architecture, even a fairly recent iPhone-class image signal processor. Like I mentioned in the MacBook Air review, adding custom Mac silicon to Intel gives Apple an advantage no other vendor enjoys, at least not currently. And, you know, in some other ways, the Mac Mini really needs it. Because, for example, graphics are limited to Intel UHD 630, and if you want anything more, you'll have to hang an eGPU or several off the back. You want memory in your new Mac Mini? How's 8 gigabytes? Okay, yeah, I get it. 16 gigabytes? More? How about 32 gigabytes? No? Still not enough? 64 freaking gigabytes of 2666, the megahertz of the beast, DDR4 RAM in SODIMMs. If you really are looking for an inexpensive desktop Mac, you can start on the smaller, cheaper end. But if you're looking to max out your Mac server, you can go higher end than ever. And because they're socketed, you can upgrade them if and when you want to, or have to. Well, if you're an iFixit class whiz, that is. Otherwise, you can take them to your local Apple store or certified service center and have them upgraded for you. It means as you or your business grows, your Mac Mini can grow with you, which helps extend its useful life and its value. Not user upgradable is the storage. It's PCIe flash soldered right onto the board, and Apple locks it down to the T2 chip for the secure boot and real-time encryption reasons I just outlined. So my advice is buy what you need up front. 128 gigabytes, 256 gigabytes, 512 gigabytes, 500 gigabytes, 1 terabyte, or 2 terabytes. And yes, you can hang more storage outside, but no matter how fast external is, it's still external. So again, I'd recommend getting enough internal to suit not just your application needs, but your baseline document needs as well. In other words, keep your live stuff live. My favorite thing about the Mac Mini, old and new, is that it has a ton of I/O for all of that stuff. There are 4 USB-C Thunderbolt 3 ports now for starters, with 2 independent controllers, and that means each port can provide up to the full 40 gigabits per second bandwidth. That's enough to drive all your eGPUs, external drives, and RAID arrays. And fast. It can also drive 2 4K displays or one 5K display at up to 60 Hz. There are also 2 USB-A 3.1 ports for your old school connects at new generation speeds, and HDMI 2.0 for your video production and home theater needs. There's gigabit or optional 10 gigabit Ethernet for the fastest networking possible. And there's even a 3.5mm jack for headphones or audio work. Yeah, the Mac hasn't deleted that yet. But digital audio mini jack, IR receiver, and SDHC card reader have all been deleted. Personally, I won't mourn the first two much, though I'm sure DJs and universal remote aficionados will. But inconveniently located on the back as it was, not having SDHC on a desktop otherwise so well suited for photography and camera work is beyond frustrating, at least for me. That aside, and yeah, depending on your workflow, that can be a little or a lot to put aside, in every other way, it makes the Mac Mini every bit as pro as Apple's best desktops, and more than any current notebook. The biggest and best surprise though coming out of Apple's Mac Mini announcement wasn't the space gray and wasn't even the 64 gigabyte option or the SO DIMMs. It was the recycled aluminum. Not that you'd know it by just looking at it. To the eye, it looks exactly like the same 6000 series bead blasted aluminum Apple's been carving computers out of since the original unibody, give or take the precise alloy. Like I said in the MacBook Air review, it's only when Apple tells you that their metallurgical team has found a way to reuse the excess aluminum alloy carved off of devices like the new iPad Pro to make devices like the new Mac Mini that you really do a double take. And that's huge, not because no one is growing any more aluminum supply on trees, but because we don't yet have another planet to escape to if we run out here, or just smelt the planet so toxic we need to run out of here. Combined with the new carbon-free smelting process Apple announced earlier this year, not having to smelt any new aluminum for new Mac Minis or Airs is nothing short of game-changing. Mac Mini was the original switcher machine for everyone ready to dump their beige box for an aluminum round rect. Mouse, keyboard, and display not included. Apple took it all the way to 4 cores and 2 terabytes before sliding back to dual core and then nothing. 4 long years of nothing. Now it's back, but while it was gone, the world changed. Switchers either became the switched or decided they preferred switching to a notebook where the trackpad, keyboard, and display were included. So where does that leave the Mac Mini, both new and in general? Still for some switchers, certainly, but increasingly for pros. Pros who need a machine not with a 5K display or Xeon chipset, but with macOS, running quietly, reliably, on or under a desk, in a home theater setup, on stage, in the server room, and yeah, in stacks and sometimes even those massive racks. For them, a Mini as pro as its space gray anodization implies is exactly what they want, especially when, even at a higher price, it's still less expensive than any Mac notebook. But yeah, that higher price. Mac Mini debuted at $499 to appeal to switchers in a time where desktops hadn't given as much weight to notebooks as they have today. It did go up to $599 in the past, but then it dropped back down to $499 a year later. Now it starts at, wait for it, $799, and goes up from there. Way up, if you really need to add all the options. But then, people buying $4,999 servers aren't buying $499 entry levels anyway. That there's an option that high but not that low should tell us everything we need to know about who Apple sees as the current Mac Mini customer. Still, I wish there was something more accessible, something at $499, even $599. For mobile, Apple solved this with a just over $300 iPad. For desktop, I wonder if they could or would do the same at some point. Something a little more than an Apple TV for a little less than a Mac Mini. Something for anyone and everyone who wants to get into computers and maybe even computer science, because that would be all they really need. Well, that and Brilliant. Brilliant is a problem-solving website that teaches you to think like a computer scientist. Instead of listening to lectures or podcasts or even videos, great as videos are, Brilliant provides the tools and frameworks you need to tackle challenges and solve problems. Brilliant's thought-provoking content based around breaking up complexities into bite-sized, understandable chunks will lead you from curiosity to mastery. So what are you waiting for? Check out brilliant.org/vector and get started today. Thanks, Brilliant. And thanks to all of you for supporting the show. So is this the Mac Mini we've all been waiting for? Yes and no. It's not a bold new take on the original switcher or a reimagining of the desktop for a post-Intel world. It's not even really entry-level anymore based on the price, except compared to every other Mac. It may be a placeholder, it could be a resurrection, but it could also be pragmatic, Most Macs sold are notebooks, not desktops, and most desktops sold are iMacs, not Mac Minis. And this is likely the type of Mac Mini that will appeal to the biggest section of the Mac Mini market. Exactly those pros I mentioned who don't need it for everything, but do need it for very specific things and find its usability and utility more than justifies its price, especially when it comes to the software it can run and the uptime it can keep. It can't replace a traditional server like Apple's old Xserve. It's not redundant. It doesn't have enterprise memory or architecture. It's not easily accessible. It's not completely user upgradable. But it is a remarkable serving appliance for those people who do literally want to just set it and forget it. And for those people, Apple probably had them at Space Gray. Wait, who am I kidding? Apple probably had them at New. For me, I haven't had the new Mac Mini for long enough to put it through enough paces to see what it really can and can't do yet. But that's exactly what I'll be doing over the next few weeks, with everything from home theater to home server, Final Cut Pro 10 to, well, you tell me. Hit like, hit subscribe, and then hit up the comments below and let me know what kind of workflows you want me to test out on the new Mac Mini, and I'll churn through as many of them as I possibly can. Thank you so much for watching.